Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I will be taking a look at the fairly new Fantagraphics release, Volume 2 of Joshua W. Cotter's Nod Away. I will say right out the gate, you can go watch my video of Nod Away 1. Really in love with that book. Really excited to read this one. And I came into it kind of confused. For some reason, I was under the impression that this was the second of two books. But once I finished it, I was very much like, there's no way this is the end of this story. And then I started reading more on the back and stuff. And this is actually 2 of 7, which is very heartening because I didn't feel like I had everything by the end of the book. Also, completely terrifying for Joshua W. Cotter because these are huge, thick, complicated, densely rendered books. And to think that there's 5 more of them is like, ooh, man, bless you. I'm looking forward to it, though. So it really also feels like this book, it really felt disconnected from the first book. Like I almost had to go back and like re-flip through the first book to refresh myself, even though I just read it like a week ago. What was going on? And I really have to go like watch my own review or really flip through it more carefully. But I feel like this book swerves to cover a different aspect of the world that Joshua Cotter's building, and that's why it felt to me like there's no way this is the end of the story because I feel like I just got a different facet of it. So it starts with the same kind of little trick of the dot of the eye, and then it expands into this like line work that Joshua Cotter is doing rather than the whole abstract opening sequence. And it changes into like this airport diagram and into the airport here. And you can see why I'm saying like, oh my goodness, you got 5 more volumes of this. Like Joshua Cotter is definitely putting in the time and the work on this book. And that's really heartening to see. In the first volume, it was a story about people kind of connecting to each other through this streaming in their head, and like not everyone could have it, and it was about the scientists who made it and all that one. This woman going in to protect this child that's being used to facilitate all of the streaming, and there's a new technology coming in place and all that. This one jumps into following this character, Marcy, really quick. And I don't remember Marcy. Maybe she was the gal in the first one. Like I said, even though it was a week apart, I've been reading so much, they get mixed up a little bit. Really enjoyed this sequence here where she's on the plane and they go through like the, how to escape the plane as comics in a comic. I think that's really cool. And just some more like abstraction and more poetic kind of sequences here, different stylistic approaches to drawing this flower. But then we switch to the character that this book focuses on, which I don't remember being a big part of the first book, at least, this character named Walt. And then he's meeting this gal here named Aveline, and they start to form a relationship. And she's obviously had a bad life. She's got scars all over her and things like that. So the majority of this book is, well, it's split into 2 chunks, but the majority is the relationship between Walt and Aveline. The second chunk is a continuation of the like silent sequences from the first book. This is more of what I remember from the first book, where you've got these amazingly detailed rendered like wild alien landscapes, and you have this guy like climbing through them like he was. It kind of reminds me of how like Farrell Dalrymple drew Brandon Graham's Prophet. This kind of has that vibe, that fantastical vibe to it. And yeah, he's just wandering around this world, and there seems to be some kind of hallucination break in reality going on. You've got this gutter here that's like connecting them, mentally on this streaming that they got, I think is what it is. And also just like these states where reality just kind of blends in together and it's all noise. This is Walt post being with this Aveline chick, and so he's just kind of going through life checked out, and I really like those sequences. Some more of these really great sequences here, these fantasy sequences. May not see it on the camera, but this is all one like giant cave system, and then this character is crawling through it. And I think like I've seen plenty of comic pages do that, but this might be the biggest scope one I've ever seen with the character the smallest in relationship. So really, really cool sequences there. Some more sequences here with Walt that I think are really nice. I'm trying not to give away too much of the story, because I'm really, after reading this one, I feel like I have less of a sense of where the story's going in the end. The first one I thought was very much about like augmented reality and everyone connecting their brain to the internet, which it still could be, but this one's very much more character driven. But just some awesome sequences here where he's laying out in the woods and he's like flattening reality out. You know, he's not seeing the depths in the trees. This is something I really enjoyed doing over the last year, flattening him out and seeing him as patterns and then going into his interior space in his head. Just a lot of really, really cool images. And as I'm flipping, you can see where I'm feeling bad for Joshua Cotter that there's 5 more books of this to draw. It's and the time jumps around in this book too. So like they're together and then they're apart and then they're not. Then the story gets like extra weird. If I remember correct, also like volume 1 ended with like a huge like crazy bloody sequence, and this didn't really carry on that. You see this sequence here where Aveline tries to hurt herself, and Walt, she's definitely like losing her mind and is being checked into a mental institution. Like here she's got this potato peeler and she's shaved all of her hair off. She's basically like scalped herself. So Walt checks her into an institution, and this is where the story starts to wrap back around. I think that what we're really getting is we're seeing how the technology evolved, or how the next state of this evolves. So we get Aveline being pregnant now while she's in this facility, and the doctor there is explaining to Walt this technology that he's built. He said he first built it as an empathy machine, but they've basically that was too painful to actually be empathetic with other people. So they've turned it into a consciousness extracting machine. And this is the most interesting idea in volume 2 to me in terms of the narrative, is they're basically like washing people's brains. They're like, well, their minds. They're taking the mind out of the brain, and then they have a digital version of it, and they almost run like a cleanup program on it and then put it back in the brain, and they can cure mental illnesses. So this doctor is saying, oh, I was able to cure my mother's schizophrenia this way. And so Walt experiences it, and then he signs Aveline up to do that. And that's kind of a lot of the plot for the rest of it. I don't want to get into that too much. I still don't know what this character has to do with it, but there's now 2 of these characters that look like the same guy to me. I didn't realize there was 2 different of these guys. I thought they were same. But looking back into the first book now, there's the guy with the mask and this guy. They both have the big long beards. They both have the long dark hair. So I think there's like some cloning going on maybe or something. I think this is Walt older in the future trying to take himself out. That's where I was like, there's no way this is the final volume. This stuff still all has a lot to play out. And with 5 more coming, yeah, indeed. And then there's definitely some, this seems to happen like at the end of these books, they get like way more bizarre and intense. So Aveline is having the children, and there's this dream sequence here where this older, I think again it's the older Walt, dreams of all these babies falling and like ripping this baby open with suggestive shapes there, and Aveline's face birthing out of it, and all these falling babies. Totally gnarly imagery. But I think the way that this one relates to the first one, again, having not read them like totally back to back, is I think we're jumping into the past, and I think Walt and Aveline are the parents of the baby that then is the center of everything in volume 1. So I think with volume 3, we'll probably be able to cycle back with that connection. So it took me a while to get into that. I think it would be even stranger reading this after God knows how long it was between volumes on this. I'd have to check that as well. But I really I would suggest a refresher read on it, because even me just reading a lot within a week time kind of needed to recheck this one. That said, I'm still completely fascinated by it. The artwork's amazing all throughout. You can see super dense panel arrangements on pages. There's a lot of pages that go by very quick because they're silent. I mean, you can soak up the detail, but then when people talk, like, it's really dense too. So you don't ever feel like the silent parts are just a way out, to fill out a book. There's almost like a sense of time, like each square inch equals so much time, and whether that's playing out silently or whether people are talking, there seems to be like this internal clock. And if the character is just stirring his cup for an hour in that internal clock, then that's what's going to be on the page. And I really like that aspect too. It makes the sci-fi, more dramatic sequences more dramatic and really makes me feel immersed in the world. So really enjoying these. Really beautiful art, really well reproduced, really cool story dealing with like themes and topics I find fascinating. Just not quite sure how it all fits together yet, but that's great because that means that I get to look forward to seeing how it all comes together. And I'm just now also prepared for the fact that I'm probably going to have to be a little confused volume by volume and then read it all in one chunk and really see the full picture.